Yo, we just people from the north side. Once the Timmy's hit the shore fine. Winter ready on the four ties. Heavy traffic during 4-5. Gotta hustle on your own time. Color people every port side. We just people from the north side.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, it's your host, your boy, George Mackay, Straight Talk Wrestling, and I got a good one. I got the daughter of a legend, the daughter of a Hall of Famer, the daughter of one of the biggest heel turns of all time in professional wrestling. Bigger than Hogan, bigger than John Cena, I would say. Ladies and gentlemen, help me welcome the legend of the legend, Kelly Slaughter, daughter of Sergeant Slaughter. How are you?
Hello, how are you?
I am fantastic. I thought for a second, I thought you were going to say, listen up, maggots. I was like, oh, she's going to say it. I love it.
Listen up, maggot.
Yes, there we go. I love it. Like we were talking about in setting up this interview, your dad was my guy. Like when I was a kid, G.I. Joe, your dad, it went hand in hand. And then he shocked the world as we turned to a new decade. In 1990, your dad became a sympathizer of Kuwait and became a sympathizer of Iraq. And he switched to the other side. And it was huge. It was huge for the wrestling world because at then we didn't have the dirt sheets. We didn't have the background information. And a lot of people believed what they saw on TV. What was it like for you, your siblings, to experience this crazy time in pro wrestling history?
It was awful. It was awful. I mean, so I have a sister. She's 4 years older than me. So I was in the sixth grade when all of this happened. So I was around 12 years old. And so that's like an awkward stage anyway, growing up. And then it was always kind of weird because of who my dad was. And so then when the heel turn happened, and I agree with you, it was probably one of the greatest heel turns in wrestling history. The kids in my grade were relentless. My sister, her friends, and the kids in her grade did not care. I think they were just older, so they understood it more. Whereas the kids that I was around, I mean, I got HE double hockey sticks. I don't know if I can swear on your program.
You absolutely can. Go ahead. I feel it.
Okay.
Go ahead. You can.
They gave me hell, and I gave it back to them. I didn't just sit there and, let them be mean to me. I was mean right back. But I would go home and ask my dad. I would tell my dad the things that people would say to me, and he would laugh. Like he would think it was funny because, it's part of the business. And I was talking with Big Boss Man's daughter, Lacey, and we were talking about how our dads got paid to talk shit to people. And that's what we grew up around. But for my dad, like that's what he did for a living. He talked shit. People talk shit to him. He talked shit to other people. So for him, it was funny. For me, it was awful. And I just wanted him to give me some comebacks, like things that I could say back. And he never did. He would just say, you can let them know that we're laughing all the way to the bank.
That's a great line. I mean, that really is. Yeah, whatever. Man. You don't like my dad. It's cool. We get paid. It's all good.
Right. Exactly. So, at the time in sixth grade, I didn't know what that meant. So I'm like, what are you talking about? We don't laugh when we go to the bank. But that was like his response to stuff. And I mean, it was not only the kids in school, but there were bomb threats. People threatened to kill us. My dad, Vince's family, they threatened to bomb the WWE offices in Stamford, Connecticut. We had 24-hour security. We had people living in a Winnebago outside of our house. Security living outside. They would do like parameter checks. They had our house was under surveillance, like on the inside. There was like audio and video equipment in there, just security cameras and things. And we had security following us everywhere we went. So if We went to the mall. My mom and sister and I, we had a security detail. They stayed away. Like it really wasn't, they weren't like right next to us. It's not like we had bodyguards or anything like that, but there was a security detail that followed us. And, it was scary. We lived on in a very small town, and we lived on a dirt road that was unmarked, and it was a very long driveway, and I would have to walk it every day after school. And I would be scared walking because what if someone was hiding in the woods, or a car could come up from behind me, and anything like that. So it was really scary, on top of having to deal with what I was dealing with at school, on top of worrying about my dad, knowing that my dad is wrestling in a bulletproof vest. um he'd already been stabbed, like in Guam, he'd been stabbed. So it was already, wrestling fans are the greatest fans in the world, but they can also be a little nutty. Let's be honest. So it was, wrestling fans are like the best though. You know what I mean? Like they just, because they get it and they get into it and they get the gimmicks and, you know, um, but it was an extremely difficult time. And I don't know if you watched the A&E biography that they did
Yes.
with my dad, but you can actually see there's a scene where we're all, my family, my dad, my mom, my sister, and I are sitting there at my dad's, and you can see my reaction. It was an honest reaction where my dad said that they knew where we lived, they knew our names, and they knew what school we went to. And that was the first time I'd ever heard that. And so my reaction, I turn, I'm like, what? I didn't know that. Like, I had no idea. They threatened us to come to our school.
Wow.
They knew where we lived. Like, nowadays it's so easy to find out that information about people. You can Google it.
Mhm.
Back then we were unlisted. There was a phone book and we were not in the phone book. Like, you did not know where we lived unless you knew us. And these people knew where we lived, and they knew my name. They knew my sister's name. And that was not public knowledge. That was not something my dad, when he would do interviews, sometimes he would say that he didn't have kids and he was single. Like, he didn't even claim us because Sarge didn't have kids. Robert Remus did.
Mhm.
So, so some people didn't even know that he had children, and here's people threatening his kids and his family. And so it was a very difficult time.
And as a family, like, I mean, you guys, obviously you were strong and you came together at this time, but it was challenging. But were there ever moments where you were like, your dad was home for those couple days off the road, and you would pop in from school and be like, Dad, listen, I got to talk to you, man. Can we drop this? Like, can we end this? Because life is unbearable. Like, I'm the only 12-year-old I know that has to have a car following me while I trick or treat, because I'm so afraid of everything. I'm afraid of a gust of wind could be someone climbing a tree. Like, we don't talk about mental health, but at that time, we never spoke about mental health. And it's so challenging for, like you said, 12 is already a shitty age. Let's be honest. Being 12, 13 as a boy or a girl absolutely sucks, because you're trying to figure out who you are. Your voice is changing. Everything's going crazy, right? And you're trying to just make sense of the world and find your place in it. And on top of that, you've got to worry about, well, my dad's got a bulletproof vest. Do I got to wear one going to school? Does my sister have to? Can my mom no longer go to the grocery store? Like, what if we want to go out to a movie or dinner? Like, do we have to go in an armored car? Like, how is life going to be how did you're you're a strong, tough girl, my dear. I could see it. And you get it from your dad. You got that strength. I get it. But at 12, where did you find the strength for we're talking a full calendar year of this stuff? Like, it was crazy.
Yes. We just banded together as a family. My dad made sure that we knew that he was okay, and that he was going to be okay, and that he knew what he was doing. I really don't think the gravity of the situation and like what really was going on, I don't think I understood, because I was so young. I didn't know, like, you could have shown me a picture of the president of the time and I wouldn't have probably, well, okay, that's a lie. I would have been able to tell you who the president was, but like a senator or something, like I would have no idea like who the speaker of the house was. Like back then I was in sixth grade. I did not care about politics, about the government. Like I just wanted to hang out with my friends, you know, and listen to New Kids on the Block. I mean, so it was, we just banded together as a family. My dad really wasn't home a lot. So it was really just me and my mom and my sister banding together, making sure that we knew that we were okay. And we knew that dad really didn't mean the things that he was saying, and that dad did love America, and that he wasn't really hanging out with Saddam Hussein, you know, and we knew, I mean, we grew up around Iron Sheik. And so we knew that like, we knew because we knew, you know, that it was going to be okay. It still was scary. My main concern back then was, well, are you going to win, Dad? Like, I don't care about anything else. I just want to know, are you going to win? Mm. That's all I cared about. And then that was that. And then it just kind of, he lost. And he begged. He had that famous promo, I want my country back. You know, that whole thing. Wrestling fans forgave him, and he was back into being a babyface again. So then it was all water under the bridge. But it is funny when I see people now, like on Facebook and comments and things like that, and on Instagram, where they're like, he's a traitor. I'm like, you guys know that's not real, right? Like,
you get it. Was just, he was acting. He was doing a job. He was paid to do a job, much like
right.
You know, the guy in a horror movie who's killing all the camp counselors. He's got no beef with camp counselors, but he's got to get paid. He's got to put food on the table.
Right. Exactly. So those are the ones that always cry stolen valor too. So it's just kind of like, okay. Yep.
But you know
that
what?
bothers me actually, only because I think it takes away from actual stolen valor.
Yes.
Because there are people, I knew someone who was married to a man. They had like a military wedding. He was like in his like dress uniform, like with all these medals and whatever. And they got married, and then she went to like apply for a VA loan and found out he was never in the military.
Oh, wow.
So
yeah.
Yeah. So like there are people that go out there and do that, you know, and I feel like it takes away from that. Like there's people that go out there and say that they earned the Medal of Honor and that have never even put on a pair of combat boots. At least my dad wore combat boots.
Very true.
I mean, you know, it's just kind of like, whatever. People are going to say what they want to say. I feel like my dad explained everything in the biography. So if people still want to come out and talk about stolen, they're only doing it because it's the only thing they can say about my dad that's negative.
100%. You can look up, anybody can look up anything and try to spin anything negatively. Right now, they could have this conversation. Exactly. It seems like, and we get, when I post this video, they could be like, oh, look at her. She's still complaining about something that happened 20 years. No, we're not complaining. We're highlighting a story. We're sharing a moment in time. That's what we're doing. But when I look at your dad's career and everything that spanned, like I said, he was my guy, good or bad. I was one of those kids who went where my guy went. So if my guy was a bad guy, I became a bad guy. If my guy was a good guy, I became a good guy. My guys were my guys, and that didn't change. That never changed. My guys were, my tastes may have evolved. You know, I went from the Sergeant Slaughters of the time in my younger days. Then I switched over to the Stings. Then I became emo when Sting went emo, and I did all these things. And then DX, I was crotch chopping everybody. I was laughing at the promos with DX and your dad. By far, some of my favorite. Oh, 100%. When they have the screens with the
windshield wiper.
Oh my God. And how your dad did not crack. I would have been laughing my butt off. How your dad kept the straightest face and had the Sarge's chin and had everything, the intensity. I'll never know. But those must have been some of his funnest moments, to be involved in that attitude era, but not have to worry about all the shenanigans in the ring. just to try to keep chaos under control. That must have been a great time for him as well.
Oh yeah. And he talks about that, and he talks about he didn't know that DX was going to do that. That Hunter and what's his name?
Sean.
Oh, I'm totally blanking on his name. Yeah, Sean. He didn't know that they were going to do that. And he saw the bag and he was like, what is in that bag? And so when they took him out and put him on, he said he was like digging in his like hip with his like pinching himself and to try not to laugh. But he got them back really good because he waited until they took them off, and then he started getting spit all over them after they took it off. So it was good. It was good. He enjoyed it too. Because his career was kind of on the down, and he was commissioner, and so he was kind of playing like a crony anyway, like one of Vince's, minions, and so he was kind of in a heel character anyway, and so he enjoyed it. He enjoyed it, and I thought it was hilarious too, because I'm like, he does spit everywhere when he talks.
Sarge, we love you. She's your daughter. I'm a huge fan. We love you. But she's right. You can look at some of your older promos, the intensity was there. And you could all, like, even there's some promos I go back, and I love the old school promos because they don't have the same vibe that they do now. Guys and girls cut promos now, and it's all business and it's intensity, and I love it. But back then, it was something special. Like, you look at those early Survivor Series promos, or you look at any promo with your dad when he was mixed with anybody, or especially your dad with Mean Gene. God rest Mean Gene's soul. Your dad with Mean Gene, some of those promos are the best. Your dad would just get so intense, and Mean Gene would just be, pulling away. But it was just, it's that magic that made, childhood fans like myself become adult fans and still enjoy it. I know the dirt sheets kind of ruined all the mystique. The curtain got pulled back. We know about everything now, but in the same time, it's still fun to go back. And like, my 9-year-old daughter, my 16-year-old daughter, not so much anymore. She's kind of faded away from wrestling, but my 9-year-old's still a big fan. I took her to Elimination Chamber. John Cena turned heel. We were in the crowd that night. We were in the building. John Cena turned heel. I looked at her. I'm like, are you okay? Are you good? Because that's her guy. John Cena's her guy. She's loved John Cena since she was 3 years old, and I showed her wrestling for the first time. She's been hooked. She's like, I'm good, Dad. She's like, where he goes, I go. And I was like, you got the Georgia, you got the Sergeant Slaughter attitude. Where he goes, you go. That's the journey. Enjoy the ride. Enjoy the story. Don't worry about which side of the fence they're on. Just enjoy it, because they're not going to be able to do this forever. So enjoy it while they're in the ring. And your dad, it's pretty cool, though, because not only does he have a Hall of Fame career, which, if I ever get to meet him, I'm going to congratulate him, give him a big hug, because he damn well deserved it. But congratulations to you. His name is etched in time. How special was it to see your dad not only cemented as a cartoon character in the G.I. Joe early movies and the early TV show, but now he's immortalized in the Wrestling Hall of Fame, the WWE Hall of Fame, which it as far as Hall of Fames go, it's top tier. There are a lot of great Hall of Fames, but WWE is cemented in legacy and in time. How special was that moment in 2004 when your dad got that induction that he so rightfully deserved?
It was very special, and it was really neat to be able to go and see my dad celebrated by his peers, celebrated, and see how much the younger guys looked up to my dad. And, he was a mentor to a lot of them as well. It was a very special thing to be able to see my dad get the recognition that he deserves.
I love that. I absolutely love that. I don't think there's a better answer than that, because your dad does deserve so many recognition. And I mean, it's got to be cool now, because I know you've accompanied your dad sometimes to conventions. You've gone with him to some of the signings and such like that. You posted a little bit of that on your Facebook page and all that stuff. When you get to see how the fans interact with him, and get to see when fans share a memory or fans talk to him, like, I mean, I show my daughter the old G.I. Joe cartoons when he comes out with the listen up, like it's gold to me. It's gold. It's some of the best. And when you see the fans sharing and interacting with your dad, and you just see the fact that he lights up because he just loves this business so damn much. I mean, he's got that the video arcade system at his house. He still plays it. Like, I love it. So when you know how important the impact was he had in pro wrestling, and how much of the fans how he touched the fans. What does that make you feel like as his daughter?
It makes it worth the fact that my dad was only home, or that my dad was gone 300 days of the year. Like, it makes it worth it because, we always had to share my dad. My dad's been wrestling since before I was born. I've never known a life without wrestling in it, or my dad wrestling. So it's really nice to see and to hear the stories and to see people cry when they meet him, get choked up, and telling so many people come up and tell him, I joined the military because of you. I'm an Army Ranger because of you. I have a friend of mine who said that if his drill instructors didn't act like my dad did, then they were no good. They weren't a real drill instructor. So I mean, that was like the basis of being a drill instructor or drill sergeant. And so, it's really cool to see, my dad recruited for the military without even knowing he was doing it, you know. Best recruitment ever. They didn't even have to pay for it.
Hell yeah, man. It was like the movie In the Army Now with Pauly Shore. You just want to go be you want to be a water boy for the Army because Pauly Shore made it look cool.
Right.
Oh.
So it's neat. And like I said, it makes it worthwhile to know that he may not have been home with us, but he was affecting so many lives. And the stories that I hear from people that say my dad wasn't in my life and you were that father figure for me. I mean, it makes me want to cry, and how that my dad really touched these people that much. And, he's just my dad. Like, you know what I mean? Like, he's not like, it's not like I'm a fan of Sarge and Slaughter. You know what I mean? I don't watch wrestling. I'm not really into wrestling. I was more when I was little. So it's, I think people get disappointed when they ask, like, what was it like to have your dad as as Sergeant Slaughter as your dad? And I'm like, what was it like having your dad as your dad? You know what I mean? It's like, he was my dad. Like, I got in trouble and for doing things that I shouldn't do. And he had to be the dad when he was home. Usually it was my mom. It was, my mom lived a very hard life because she was mom and dad. She was a single parent with being married, and you know what I mean? It was like he was never home. So she was the one that was mom and dad. And so, yeah.
Listen, I've talked to so many legends, children, and some legends who speak so fondly of the wrestling business, and some legends who, children who say, it was hard. It was hard that I had to share my father. And even though my father was out there entertaining and touching so many lives, he was never home for me. And you hear that so often. But you know what? The one thing I can say is your mom, she had to shoulder the load. And he even talked about that in the biography. He talked about how, he missed you guys like crazy and he wished he could have been there. But the business is so much different now than it was at that time. And you know what? I didn't have the best childhood. I will be completely honest. My childhood was up and down. My parents should not have been parents. We'll just say that. But I did have guys like Sergeant Slaughter. I did have guys like Sting. I did have guys like my heroes, the Ultimate Warrior, Shawn Michaels when he was the Rocker, Shawn Michaels DX. I was a Triple H guy all the way through. Terrorizing to the blue blood, the awful curtsying gimmick and the slop. Oh God, horrible gimmick, but he made it work. And then, just when your dad came back as the commissioner, I was like, this is just genius because it's Sarge, but it's like a Sarge that's bought and paid for. He's corporate Sarge now. He's not just Sarge. So just having the evolution of these characters, growing up with them, these larger than life figures, and now being able to share some of those moments and memories. I would never ask a question, what was it like because I know what it was like having your dad as Sergeant Slaughter. There were challenges, but there were also triumphs. And even though at the time you may have not understood everything, you look back and you know what? My dad being Sergeant Slaughter paid for everything. My dad kept my mom might have kept the family together, but my dad kept the family together. And your dad has touched so many lives and cemented so many lives. And you know what? If there's one thing that I learned from your dad, two things I learned from your dad. Always remember where you came from. Never forget where you started. Enjoy the finish, but also remember every single bump in the road. Whether it was a low bump or a high bump, it's all a part of your story. And your dad's story, that biography, incredible. I'm not going to lie. I don't get emotional too often. Actually, since I became a father, I have two daughters like your dad. I'm a girl dad to like the T, and I get emotional over everything. Okay. There's a commercial over here where like a daughter breaks down, and it's like a Rogers cable television commercial because that's our cable people over here. And it's like, honey, don't worry. The mechanic's on his way. I'm going to stay on the phone with you. And I'm sitting there going, I would stay on the phone with you. I would do it. I would stay on the phone with you. I'd wait. So I'm a girl dad through and through, and everything like that gets emotional. And just to see the love your family has in that A&E biography, those A&E biographies are incredible, but your dad's, and I'm not sugarcoating this just because you're on here with me, your dad's was special. Your guy's story was incredible, and you should be honored at the fact that your dad touched so many lives, but also you guys were able to go through all those tribulations and still come out as amazing as you are, because you're incredible. And I can see that's with your mom and your dad behind you.
That is very kind of you. And thank you so much for saying that. Wow. Yeah, it's, I definitely, if I had had different parents, even, my dad was still a wrestler and like I had a different mom and it was a different dad, I don't think that we would have turned out the way that we did, because there were wrestlers that, my dad, when he was off, he came home and he spent time with us. He spent as much time with us as he possibly could. And there are other wrestlers that when they had their time off, they were not going home. And so that affected their children and their marriages. And my dad made his family a priority. And it definitely taught my sister and I that lesson, that family is number one. Wrestling was number one, but we were like a close in there. Wrestling had to be number one because that's what paid the bills. Mm-hmm. And like you said, wrestling is so different now. Like John Cena has a bus that he doesn't even have to drive himself anywhere. Like he can sleep and rest and let his body recover. Whereas my dad was driving himself from match to match, from city to city. Staying in the cheapest hotel room they could find, motel room that they could find, crappy beds, not sleeping. And for those that don't know, sleeping is very important for recovery for your body. Not just because we need sleep, but your body actually recovers from injury when you're sleeping. So, he didn't get that, and he definitely paid for it later on in life. And, yeah. So thank you for saying that. And I'm glad that the biography touched you. That girl in the blue dress that kept crying, I have no idea who she was. No idea.
Me either, I swear. I never knew. I never understood it. I never understood any of it.
No idea who she was, that girl that was crying the whole time. It's funny because any big emotions, like I guess my body just doesn't know what to do with it. And so they just come out as tears. So if I'm really happy, really sad, if I'm nervous, if I'm angry, I will cry. And so if I'm like crying and yelling at you, you need to back away slowly because I'm really trying not to murder you. But I forgot. I kind of lost my train of thought. Like I started thinking about murdering people.
We were talking about the fact that, your dad didn't have the recovery time that he could have, sleeping in those cheap motels with those horrible beds and those horrible situations. But now, you get the best of the balance. The work-life balance is definitely more so there. And I feel like it's because of all the work that the legends and everyone in those time periods, whether they're in the Hall of Fame or not, they're all legends because they all broke their bodies. They broke their spirits. They put their families second to entertain all of us in the wrestling business. And if us fans can do anything, It's to pay the respect, which they are so rightfully all deserved, but also to thank you, the family members, because you guys sacrificed more than anything. You let us spend more time with your father than you ever got a chance to. So for that, I say thank you, because without your dad in my life, I don't know where I would have been. Straight up. Your dad was a guy that kind of, I woke up every Saturday. I got to see what Sarge is getting into today. Got to see what's popping. Got to see what's going on in the world of wrestling, right? And then you'd pick up, Pro Wrestling Illustrated, and you're like, oh, what's going on here? What's happening? Like, you try to immerse yourself. People who aren't wrestling fans don't get it. But when you're a wrestling fan, everything matters. You've got to soak it all in, because if you don't pay your ticket now to get a chance to see this person, you may never see them again. And that's why, it's so important. And I kind of feel that it's sad that the world kind of didn't pay your dad that respect. When John Cena turned heel, they talked about the Hogan heel turn, but nobody talked about the Sarge heel turn. I mean, it was 5 years apart, and Sarge's heel turn had death threats, bomb threats, families on the line. I don't think Hogan's or Cena's has touched that. So if anything, the true big heel turn of professional wrestling, I'll say it right now, with Sergeant Slaughter turning his back on the old US of A, 150%.
I agree, 100%. 100%.
Well, you lived through it, so yes, I 100% know you would agree.
Yes, for sure.
But you know what? At least you have your dad now, and you could share those memories and share those moments and those stories. And I gotta ask, because your dad's probably got some hilarious road stories. Is there ever a story that, because as dads and moms get older, they always seem to tell the same stories. Oh, I remember this one time, and I did this one 15 miles uphill in the snow barefoot. Does your dad always have like one story where he tells all the time, and you're like, I've heard this story before, but I still love it constantly, all the time?
All of his stories are like,
okay, fair enough.
like, I've heard this story so many times. Yeah. I mean, he does tell. So, little shameless plug here, but I have a YouTube channel called Slaughter Daughter, and it's basically me and my dad just talking, and he does tell some stories from the road, and he tells a really funny story about him and Roddy Piper. He and Roddy Piper were very good friends, and he was a good friend to our family as well, and so you have to watch it, because I can't do the story justice, but it's like crazy. And the things that they would get away with, because number one, they were good talkers, right? They were like really good at, like, I mean, they've like cut a promo on people, the cops or whatever. They get pulled over and they're getting recognized, and, oh, you want an autograph? And but they were good talkers, and they could talk themselves out of things. And but you got to watch it, because he's got some really good stories on there with him and Roddy. And yeah, it's like I think it's called Stories from the Road or something like that. I can't remember, but it's a good one to watch for sure.
100%. I know that story very well, because I have watched it myself, and that's one story that I love. It's absolutely, and you know what, man, I can see like your dad. It's hard when he tells those stories, when he shares them, because a lot of the guys that he's talking about are no longer around. So it hurts, when you're seeing a lot of your friends and a lot of people you came up in the business with not being here anymore. And Roddy was one of those dudes, man. Roddy was like he said, right? Every time they think they got all the answers, I change the questions. So that saying still reigns true to wrestling. That, listen up, maggots, with a tear in my eye, you can't see me, and suck it, are all in the same wheelhouse, in my opinion. 150%.
Yes, definitely.
Kelly, it's been amazing to sit down and talk with you and reminisce about everything, your dad, and how amazing truly he was. And I want to say thank you from the bottom of my heart for giving the time out, because not only am I a fan of your dad, but now I'm a fan of you. The whole Slaughter family is super awesome.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure. I had a great time.
Well, thank you. I appreciate
Thanks for having me on.
I absolutely, listen, if your dad's ever bored and he needs a place to talk to someone who hasn't heard all the stories, you tell me, I will gladly have your dad on this show. I would go crazy. The first 20 minutes would just be like, oh my God, it's Sarge. Call me a maggot again. Call me Mag. Come on, one more time. Call me a maggot. One more time. Call me.
Now call me a puke.
Yeah. Tell me I suck. Do it. Spit on the screen. Yeah. I love it. Yes. All right, guys, that's it for this one. This has been Kelly Slaughter. I'm your host, your boy, George Mackay. Peace, love, and wrestling. We'll see you guys next week. Peace.
Yo, we just people from the north side. Once the Timmy's hit the shore fine. Winter ready on the full ties. Heavy traffic during 4-5. Gotta hustle on the own time. Color people every port side. We just people from the north side.